Good evening, everyone. Mon nom est Émilie Retailleau, je suis conservatrice publique au CCA. Tout d'abord, merci à tous d'être là pour cette conférence de Lara Almarcegui, ici présente. Avant d'introduire donc notre invité, je voulais vous informer en fait que le CCA a entrepris de développer une reconnaissance territoriale à long terme, et aussi en collaboration avec les membres de la nation ghanéenne-Guéhaga. Nous reconnaissons également les nombreuses nations qui sont les gardiennes de ces terres et de ces eaux, où vivent aujourd'hui diverses personnes issues des Premières Nations inuites et métisses. Le CCA est une institution coloniale et nous nous efforçons de susciter des relations positives avec les peuples autochtones et d'autres communautés de Tiohtià:ke, Mouniang, Montréal. J'ajouterai juste dans ce cadre-là que la première phase du processus a été lancée en 2022, en février 2022, avec une bourse de 2 ans pour les chercheurs autochtones qui travaillent sur la restitution des terres. Et je voulais juste attirer votre attention sur Angeloft, qui est la première boursière, et son installation qui est actuellement donc, dans les espaces publics du CCA, qui s'appelle visiblement Iroquoien, et que je vous encourage à aller voir après cette conférence. Voilà. En lien avec l'événement de ce soir et également dans nos espaces, je vais commencer juste par vous parler d'une autre exposition, c'est Les vies des documents, la photographie en tant que projet. C'est une exposition donc, qui présente des projets photographiques des années 70 à aujourd'hui, qui proviennent de notre collection, mais aussi d'ailleurs. Et c'est une exposition qui s'intéresse à la photographie en tant qu'outil d'investigation de notre environnement bâti et aussi qui s'intéresse aux moyens par lesquels les photographes produisent des arguments visuels, des critiques sur l'urgence ou sur des critiques plutôt innovantes sur cet environnement bâti. C'est une exposition aussi qui marque le début d'un projet à long terme, d'un projet institutionnel à plus long terme, autour donc, de l'étude, autour de la photographie dans l'étude de l'architecture et toujours de l'environnement bâti. Et ce projet à plus long terme va comprendre des publications, d'autres expositions qui sont aussi à venir, des séminaires, une réflexion sur la collecte aussi, et la dissémination des images photographiques et des programmes publics. Donc, dans ce cadre-là, c'est ce soir que nous accueillons donc, Lara Almarcegui, qui est une artiste espagnole qui vit à Rotterdam parce qu'elle a collaboré à l'exposition donc, Les vies des documents, la photographie en tant que projet, avec un projet de Guide to the Wasteland, donc de guide des terrains vagues, autour de la carrière Francon. Donc, actuellement, dans nos salles, vous pouvez y aller. Elle a créé un guide qui est à disposition des visiteurs. Vous pouvez l'emmener aussi chez vous. Aujourd'hui, donc, on a invité Lara à parler de ce projet-là, mais aussi à présenter plus généralement sa pratique. Depuis une vingtaine d'années, elle a développé une pratique qui se situe à l'intersection de l'art contemporain, de l'exploration urbaine et de la photographie. On vit une époque de beaucoup de construction ou de rénovation urbaine. Et la position de Lara est de nous inviter à prendre acte, quelque part, de ces espaces délaissés, justement, dans le tissu urbain, comme les terrains vagues, les bâtiments abandonnés, inoccupés, des anciennes carrières, ou des édifices qui sont en cours de démolition ou qui sont en attente d'une décision, tout simplement. Elle remet en question, en fait, le cycle contemporain de construction et de démolition, en fait, et de développement d'infrastructures pour lancer des conversations publiques sur les matériaux de construction, les excavations, les démolitions et aussi les ruines urbaines contemporaines. Donc ce soir, on l'a vraiment invité à venir partager ces processus de recherche aussi, dans ces processus de recherche et de création, en fait, ce qu'elle applique pour construire ses projets, ses installations, ses expositions aussi et ses guides. Voilà. Donc, je vais maintenant laisser la parole à Lara. Et à la fin de la présentation, bien sûr, on ouvrira une période de questions-réponses, si vous le souhaitez, en anglais ou en français. La présentation de Lara se fera en anglais, mais n'hésitez pas, si vous avez des questions en français, il n'y a pas de problème. Voilà, merci.
Well, good evening, everyone. I will speak in English. My French is a bit too messy, but maybe also my English. So anyway, if I say something that doesn't make sense or is too Spanish or you like me to explain it a bit better, don't hesitate to stop me. Also, Emily, maybe it's your job. And then I try to rephrase it maybe with your help, because I never know how this language thing will work. So yeah, thanks CCA for this invitation. To present my work tonight, but also mainly for the invitation to make a new project, and not just the invitation, but also go along with it and help me and support in it, because I know it is not that easy. I mean, when you start a project, you never know what can happen, and sometimes complicated things can really happen. So I don't take it for granted. I really don't take it for granted, and I can see the risk on it. So I really appreciate it. That we did this thing together. So let's explain to you how my practice started as an artist. I mean, I'm trained as an artist. I'm an artist. But since I was very young, I was very curious about architecture. I was very interested in architecture construction. And I had this curiosity for buildings. And what I did is I just walk around and I look at buildings, I look at constructions. I was trying to understand them, to understand basically how space how it is built. And the more I look at the buildings a bit by myself, the more I start to question things and realize actually that even if I love buildings, something was a bit wrong to me. I see that actually there was too much construction, too much architecture, too much design. I had the feeling that everywhere I was completely surrounded by design. I think I should say, because this that I'm telling you about happened in the 90s when I was a student in Spain. Of course, maybe it's not by chance, because in the 90s, Spain was like a total euphoria or furor, excitement of building non-stop. Everyone was so happy to build and construct. And it felt an exciting moment. But then all this design, like all the space corresponds to someone's design, to be always within the project of an architect, it was not okay. So even if I enjoy construction a lot, at the same time I start not being able to really breathe with so much design around me, and I started practice where I was trying to basically stand against design and stand against construction and stand against architecture. And I did that sometimes in a very straightforward way, maybe a bit almost naive or young. But I was trying to question this over design. And something I started doing very fast, very early, was I was defending what was, I thought, against architecture, which were places that escape architecture. And that's where they call the wastelands, terrain vague or friche, also an interesting word. In France, empty lots, demolition sites, places that may be just temporary, but they don't really fit to a certain architectural project. And I found them really very important as a way to confront what was going on with design. So I will start my presentation with this project, which is super old, but very important to me because it helped me to define whom I wanted to be as an artist. We were in Basque Country, and the curator had organized a workshop where she invited a group of young artists to do an exhibition in this building, which was scheduled to be demolished. It was a market hall. It was a working market hall where they sell vegetables, and it had a wonderful life there was a very interesting life on the neighborhood. And the demolition of this building was, well, a very sad one because it destroyed the community around it. It's also quite an interesting architecture, as you see, from the 30s. And I find it very unfair that it was going to be demolished and it was going to be replaced by a shopping mall. I totally disagree with it. And I also disagree with the fact of being an artist and making an exhibition inside the market, and to show that I was against the demolition, what I did was a project that consists in renovating it. So there were just 3 weeks left until the demolition, and what I did is I spent them working on the renovation. I mean, there was no time left to do a proper renovation, so it was almost just in the facade, taking out the old plaster, filling up some gaps. It was in the outside, so, but it was very important for me because it was a work about taking position with the city, which is disagreeing with the demolition, disagreeing with the urban renewal plan. And what was more important is that I was disagreeing with how the art was explained to me in the art school, or how the art market says or thinks the art is. I didn't agree with me being an artist, producing artworks in my studio that go to the exhibition space, and the architecture of the exhibition space, the building, the neighborhood is just a container of these objects. That's how the art wall is seen traditionally, and this didn't work well for me. So being in the street, renovating this building was a way to be against this life as an artist, as production of art objects, which I was already seeing as something I can compare with life in a city. Like if you live, the inhabitants of the city, we are in the city, and we're supposed to work during the week and make shopping in the weekend, and then fill up our house architecture with these things we buy. Well, that's not how I want to be in space. So the same, I don't want to be like that, just a producer of objects as an artist, or a consumer of objects as an inhabitant. So all this for me is in this super naive and useless project, but very important to me. Something else I did to stand against architecture from a very different characteristic. It was in this water tower. I was invited to do a project in an area in Alsace, in Fasburg, a small village. And I found this water tower that was scheduled to be demolished, and we calculate the construction materials used to build them. And now I have to move. Sorry for the microphone, but I think it's important. 50 cubic meters of brick, 4 cubic meters of concrete. So these are the materials used to build the water tower, and the project consists in identifying them and then pile them up near the water tower. So you have like the ingredients of a building. You see what the building is made of, what the architecture is made of. Of course, the architecture, which is a tower, obviously, is put in pieces. So I was analyzing it, trying to understand it with quite some curiosity about it, but also I was destroying it, which I think was interesting. So thinking about where buildings come from, and also mentioning the enormous amount of materials necessary of construction, because construction is not a small thing. Something important for me in my process is that I was thinking about how normally art is defined. Visual arts relates with this idea of something that is an image, or definitions of architecture related with the idea of architecture as image, or I remember a definition of a famous Spanish architect, Fisac, buildings are the air inside the building. And all these definitions I collect because they were very inspiring to me, because they really make me very angry. The idea that a building is the air, or a building is, or art is an image, because there is much more to it, or I thought there should be much more to it. So for me to say that the water tower was 12 cubic meters of stone or 50 cubic meters of bricks, or to put it in the material, was a heavy answer to these definitions of architecture as air, for instance. That's what I was doing. As an anecdote, it's not about my process, but I think it might be funny seen years later. The mayor of the village didn't like the work, so he censored it. That was, I was very young. This was heavy for everyone. But it launched my practice in France, because everyone came to defend the project. This is a later project with a similar idea, but in this case what we did is we pile up the rubble after the demolition of a house. So the image on the left side, up, is a building that was scheduled to be demolished. Then you see down on the left, the building being demolished, and then I asked the contractor to keep the rubble for me, and then we pile up. So it is the material of the house, not a copy, as in the water tower, not the same amount of materials, but this is really the house. So It is the material of the house, but if the water tower is before the building, this is after the building. Something interesting is the scale of the work. Of course, it's 1:1 scale, and this is what the work is about this enormous volume of material being moved for construction, so the consequences of construction. With this similar idea, we did something in Vienna, Secession. I don't know if you know Secession, but it's an art center in Vienna, which we all love, especially artists. We love it because it was started by artists in the maybe 1870s or something, and it's still run by artists. So it's basically the oldest artist-run space in the world, which is still being run by artists. So we all love it. So it was a big challenge to do an installation there. I calculate the construction materials used to build the space, and then we pile them up. In this case, we didn't demolish, of course, Secession, that's not something I want to do. What we did, we contacted demolition companies, and we asked them for the same amount of material. So if the space needed 99 cubic meters of brick, we borrow 99 cubic meters of brick. Let me see if you see it better in the next image. The mountain on the right side, the red one, which is it's the highest. You don't notice because it's behind, but this is the biggest material. The mortar is on the right, the concrete, the sand, the wood, the polystyrene, and the terrazzo, which is stone. There is also glass and steel iron, which is very small. So you see a building in pieces. Basically, it is talking about what happened with the construction after, and it relates with the city, because this rubble comes from the city. Maybe I should explain that all these materials we borrow from demolition companies, and then they take it back. So we never keep it. It's their material. In Venice, I did a similar work with the Spanish pavilion, except that in Venice they don't separate the materials so much as Vienna. So what you had is this huge, big mountain, 600 cubic meters, with rubble containing the cement, the brick, the gravel, the mortar, all the tile were all in one heap. The glass and the sand and the wood and the steel were separated, very, very, very small. So, but actually, I quite enjoy this kind of messy, formless thing. So you have, if a building is carrying the same amount of materials, and you are seeing a building as a ruin, actually carrying its own ruin. And well, there are several issues with it, and one of it is that it might collapse because this is very heavy. This is all very, very heavy. So the suggestion of the collapse is there, and the risk of the collapse is there. We work with civil engineers to prevent it happening. Thinking about the weight of a building or the materials need to make a building, we continue doing that a little bit further. And I think the most challenging that I enjoy to show you is the calculation we did of all the materials part of the city of Sao Paulo. I'm not going to explain how we did this calculation, because that would be a talk on itself, 1 hour, and it's also not very entertaining. But I guess the important thing is to say that this calculation has not been made. So it's not that we took it from Google or we made an estimation like if Sao Paulo has 17 million inhabitants, one inhabitant consumes 1 cubic meter of concrete by year, so we multiply. We didn't do that. I don't do this kind of statistics. We really work with existing data, because we are not going to measure Sao Paulo, but Sao Paulo has been measured by other people. We use the existing measurements of square meters of different kind of constructions, and then we identify the materials of the construction. So anyway, we did the calculation, months of work with a group of people, geographer, architects, students, and then the engineers that control us, and well, a lot of concrete. Actually, it's interesting to see concrete as this material that is the most present in Sao Paulo. It's not a surprise, but I start to think about concrete more after this work, and I start to focus a lot in this material. Talking about areas that escape a definition and are not fixed. This project in Saint-Nazaire for me was very important. It's also old. Saint-Nazaire is a city in France, and I was invited to do a solo show in the art center, which is the small building. In the small photo on the right side, you see a building. The show was there, and then I found out that the building in front was going to be demolished. And funny enough, the building in front, I don't know if you've seen the photo, but it's a copy of the art center. It's a copy, a bit 50s, post-war architecture, but mimicking the old casino, which was the contemporary art center. So the copy of the art center was going to be demolished, so I did a project that, in a very simple way, just invite the public to come to the art center, to the street, and watch the demolition. Be aware that something is being transformed in the city. So don't follow the art program offered to you, but get an idea of what are doing to you in your city. And there is this anecdote that for me it's important. The curator showed me an interview by the mayor of Saint-Nazaire, Joël Bateau, where he said in the interview, they were talking about the construction of Saint-Nazaire, the new projects, and he said, I don't build a city, I build an image of a city. Je construis l'image d'une ville. And when I read that, I was very shocked of how blunt and direct the mayor is. But then I was very shocked because I realized actually that's what they all do. That's what they do in Barcelona. That's what they do in Rotterdam. Every city I can think about that I know a bit, that's what they do. They build images, or at least that's what was going on at that time. And then that was very helpful for me because I was a young artist trying to think very much about my position in the city and art. And this comment allowed me to say, okay, the mayor is building an image. What I want to do as an artist is to present something that doesn't fit that image. I'm really into, I don't know what, but it's not that image. And I think if you see the photo, the image, what you see the public are looking, well, it's I don't know what it is. I didn't plan it. No one knew it would look like that day. It was completely unexpected. And if you look at the buildings on the photo below, you have this kind of ideal Art Deco building of 1900. You have this 50s architecture that was going to be replaced by a kind of 2000s dock architecture, but the demolition site is really none of these three. It's nothing. And that's why it's so interesting. No? There is freedom of a design. So even more open, what can be more open than Wastelands, terre vague. I started working and concentrated in Wastelands when I was living in Amsterdam. I was a student in Amsterdam, and I think this is not by chance, because Amsterdam is a city that is very designed with a lot of care. And I think since the 1700s, you have whole neighborhoods that fit 100% to a certain plan and a certain design. And living there, I really feel like so claustrophobic. It was really like I was always within someone's plan. So I started to need to go to the Wastelands. So I started to go to the Wastelands, the terre vague, just to breathe for myself. They were very important. So I started thinking more seriously about them. And I started doing these projects where what I did was I copied the architecture guides existing of Amsterdam, the modern architecture guides, and I would publish a guide of the Wastelands. So this is the map area of the guide, the first guide to the Wastelands we published. So it was 99, and I located like around 18 empty lots. We marked them in the map. And then at the other side of the map, there were texts describing each of them and trying to go into the problematic behind each of the Wastelands. So this was a guide, and for me, this is important because it's an invitation to go and experience the place by yourself. So you know the Wastelands are there, and then it's up to you to go when you want and experience them on the way you like. I guess if we look at this map now, I was a bit ashamed to put the date yesterday because it's such an old work, but I think it's important because this is showing how Amsterdam was at that time. And for the ones that know the city, well, it has changed a lot. I mean, many of these empty lots have disappeared. So a lot of the empty lots get developed. Of course, when I say wasteland or empty lot, I'm talking about very different places from let me see if it goes. From this one, that's more what you would call terre vague, like a place undefined, almost periphery, is near the port area, very large, to this that is really very, very small, very, very city center. But each one it has its own narrative, and something different is going on, and it's, you can learn a lot from them. You learn a lot about the nature process, but you can learn a lot as well about ownership, about regulations, about the things the city doesn't want to talk directly about, the things the city conceals, the things that are not that image of the city. And that's why I find them very, very interesting. Well, actually, I just heard yesterday that Ignacio de Solà Morales, the Spanish Catalan architect, he did this lecture on terre vague, and apparently it was here, which is kind of impressive to me, because at the time I was in Amsterdam, I read different texts on terre vague that people from the architecture will pass to me, and this text by Solà Morales was like, okay, this is the best. And then since then, whenever I teach, I always give it to students, and for me it's like the Bible of the terre vague. It's what I find so amazing about this text. Well, there are many things, but there's a moment where he mentions one of the characteristics of terre vague is the possibilities. He used the word possibilities, and this feels really like, wow, that's what I want of the wastelands, no? Or that's why I think they are so important to me, and I need them. So I kind of feel really represented by this word from Solà Morales. What happened after that work, some years after, I got a commission. Commission in art normally is referred to the fact that I got an offer to do a permanent work with a big budget. And this was not really permanent, but from 15 to 50 years. It was the first time I got that offer because of the work I do. It doesn't happen so often. It's more like for traditional sculpture. I find it wonderful when I visit the site, because the piece of land where they were asking me to do a work was actually a wasteland, very small wasteland, but on the water of the port of Rotterdam. That makes it even more impressive. Of course, the wastelands by the water, they tend to be very, very beautiful. And it was an amazing place. So I realized with all this state of things where wastelands are always being developed, the best I could do is to propose to the owner, that was public, it was the Ministry of Public Works, to keep it as a wasteland, just to make sure that there is never a design, well, never, during the time of the project, that was 15 to 50 years. So I asked them to do nothing with it, which was controversial, because if you have a piece of land and a budget and you invite an artist and the artist say, I'm going to do nothing, it was difficult to convince them, but I managed. I made a team of people and we convinced them. So now you have the image of the place after years of negotiation and discussion. The place is really small, actually. And I remember at the moment this project was realized, I got some criticism saying, why would I protect that area that is so small, so non-important compared with the others? But if you see the wasteland is this triangle, this black one. On the left side, there is this gray area that was pointed another amazing wasteland. This was really like a terre vague to dream with it open, really very, very interesting. And there were many others in this map. All the gray areas are also the wastelands at the time we made it. But they got developed. They got developed meanwhile, and I couldn't stop it. But the one I could stop is the one of the project. The photo on the right side shows this amazing wasteland, how it is nowadays in 2022. It's just a production place. So this project was literary about taking away space and ground to architecture or design, let's say, or landscape architecture, because I mean, this wasteland would never have been a big building would have never been constructed there. I mean, it's not that I stopped a big architecture or construction. Let's be clear, that was not the plan. The land is too small, it's too near the water. So I'm not going to play this kind of power activities because I wish I had it, but I just don't have it. I operate in another scale. Nevertheless, I think it's interesting. I mean, to stop a landscape architecture project or a small pavilion or something, well, it is something. Because it's not about the size, it's about the freedom of design, basically, the lack of design. So with this idea of protecting wastelands, I did several. This one I quite enjoy because, it didn't pass. Now you see. This was done in Zaragoza, my hometown in Spain, and this was commissioned part of the international fair, the World Fair, that was called Expo Agua, a world fair dedicated to water. They had a program of sculptures along the river, and within that frame I convinced them to just keep the land as it was. And this is interesting because world exhibitions like Olympic projects are big tools of development. So it's actually, if I have been looking at Wastelands since a while, and actually these Olympics and world fairs are the bigger way to get rid of, to construct wastelands. So to protect the wasteland in the frame of a world exhibition was quite a pleasure for me. And then this one is protected forever. So that was also very, that feel kind of better than the others. Now you see. So at the same time I was trying to protect wastelands. Well, you can imagine it isn't so easy. Like we fail a lot. Like I'm presenting you the ones protected successfully, but I'm not telling you the ones we try and we fail, because I think, okay, Le Havre, Bremen, Nordholm. I mean, I could say a list of places where we try, Bilbao, we tried to protect the land and we failed. So it was a constant failing, still worth it. I don't regret it. Or Madrid or Moss in Norway, we protect. They say, okay, 1 year, then we renegotiate. Come on, they say 1 year just to keep us entertained, but in 1 year they totally forgot about us. So we kind of constantly fail in protecting wastelands, but still worth to try. And at the same time, I realized that the guides are still interesting. In a way, it's a smaller thing than the protection of a piece of land, but they have this capacity of documenting the wastelands before they are built, which is important because they are about to disappear. Actually, they don't exist anymore. So I continue doing these guides, and then I try to concentrate in areas that were really about to disappear. Actually, areas with a big urban development plan approaching. Basically, for example, the Flashing River guide, the one on the left up, this was an area that was going to have a big development, or Bilbao docks, also along the water. Along the water is always interesting. There was also a lot of new construction after the end of industry, but also looking carefully to areas threatened by Olympic game projects. That's the guide, second on the left, down in London, before the London Olympics, and the one in Rome. I will show you. So this guide was produced 3 years before the Olympic Games, when they were already constructing the Olympics, but there were still many pieces of land that were not going to be part of the Olympic Park, but they were going to be affected by the Olympic development. And at the moment I did the publication, they were amazing wild areas. You could walk there, almost meet no one, enjoy the nature. They were wonderful wetlands, actually, really very amazing spaces. So I thought it was very important to make this guide, actually, because they were about to be developed and about to disappear. There was this necessity to go there and visit them. So the guide starts with a map pointing them, and then going slowly, presenting one wasteland after another wasteland, and trying to get into the details, trying to describe what is going on in this piece of land, what used to be there. For example, this one used to be a chemical plant, but whom is the owner now and why it's not built, and what is the discussion, the problems being discussed now, which is rather tricky. Actually, I must say, for example, the London municipality didn't want to talk to us. They say they protect themselves. They say they use terrorism as a reason not to communicate with us. So the question of what is going on now and what is the plan is an itchy question. Even in the cities that play the most transparency, it's not a welcome question. So these publications have a lot of them. Actually, I have them here. If you like to see, no, you don't see very well. Well, you see the projection. So they go wasteland by wasteland, inviting people to get to know them, and then Rome. Rome guide of the Wastelands document pieces of land along the Tevere River, very north of Rome. Probably if you know Rome, you might not have been in that part so north, near the television headquarters. And what happened with this guide is that Rome had an application for the Olympics, but they removed it. With the financial crisis, they decided to remove it, so they never even compete until the end, and they never got the Olympics. So the Olympics didn't happen, and so the area didn't get developed as it was planned. So we can say it's actually good news for the Wastelands. But of course, this is the area where Rome wants to grow in the future. I mean, whatever comes to the mind of the city for the future is going to happen there, because this is the large empty area. This is the area where the city is dreaming itself. No? So that's why it's interesting. I think this project was done around 2011 by an independent foundation in Rome. And then there was a show related with the periphery of Rome, the idea of the periphery, and they invited me to be part of this show, and we were going to show it, but then the curator had this very bad news by the ones running the space, which was a public space in Rome, saying that we couldn't show this work. So just to mention, it's a work that is painful. Like 7 years after, public authorities, they don't want to see this work because it talks about land and non-developed land and ownership of land, and these are itchy questions. And I'm not happy this happened, but just to say there is some content in these publications, which is I guess worth discussing. No? Well. Okay, the series keep on growing, and one I quite like and relate with how I am working now is the one of the gravel pits of Basel, les gravières in French. You say sablières or gravières, the places where Basel extracts its concrete, actually its aggregate. The questions of aggregates are very often forgotten when discussing mining. It's not the material most often discussed in mining, but it's actually extracted on an enormous volume and very near the cities. So in Basel, I found 10 enormous pieces of land devastated, destroyed because of the extraction of aggregates and abandoned. And I decided to make this guide, reviewing them and telling the story of each of them. And each one has a totally different story. Also because Basel is on a frontier land. It's in between Switzerland, France, and Germany. So in every country there is a different regulation. So the way they deal with extraction and waste is completely different. To put you an example, which for me it was quite extreme. In Basel, in Switzerland, they fill up the quarries with chemical waste in the 60s. And this would get forbidden later, and they would fill them up with demolition rubble, construction rubble. And this is forbidden nowadays, and they fill them up now with what they call Aushub, which is excavation earth, like the first layer of earth, of soil that's supposed to be not that dirty, that is being excavated when making the foundations of a new building. So this is only allowed. And this is just Switzerland. In France, they excavate below the water level, so there are these lakes. That's because they go below the NAP, which, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I can imagine the river is not that happy. And in Germany, they do this thing nowadays, which is, I still don't totally understand, this they call compensation land. So the quarries get filled up, and they become a meadow for the cows that become nature that can be used to excavate, to build something else, or destroy another area. So it kind of duplicates. It's a kind of infinite duplication of destruction. So this compensation land, I don't know, we have to do the multiplication to get the idea of what's going on. So I'm not saying all the wastelands are the same. I'm not saying all the wastelands in Basel are the same. Each one has different things are going on in each piece of land. And that's what these guides are about. They try to give these details. Okay, now you see the different ones. Okay. Now, it stays. At the same time, I produced this guide of the wastelands I had to show in the exhibition square. And we locate the smaller of the active gravel quarries because, okay, they are abandoned, but there are also some active. And we ask them how much they produce by day. They extract by day 1,000 tons of material, which they separate in 4 different materials: sand, small gravel, medium-sized gravel, and big gravel. So from the big gravel, like this, like 5 centimeters, the production is average of 250 tons by day. This is the smallest gravel quarry in Basel. So what I did is I asked them to bring it to the square. So every day we bring to the public square the amount of big gravel extract, 250 tons. So you have Monday, 250 tons. Tuesday, a second mountain at 250 tons. And let me see the image. This is around the end of the week, Thursday. And okay, the last image, you see the extraction of gravel in 1 week in the smallest quarry in Basel. So yeah, it is big, the thing about extraction, and it's really very near the city center. So these amounts, they impress me. They say it's sometimes they say it's a megalomaniac work, but I think this if you compare the mountain with the building behind, you tell me whom is the megaloman here. I did a project on a much more discrete scale with the same idea of the materials extracted a day in Spain when I had an exhibition in Catalunia. There is a big gravel quarry, gravel and sand. They extract both at the same time. And what I asked them is to stop for 1 day. So if in Basel we bring the gravel extract in 1 day, in Catalonia we ask them 1 day, no extraction, no work, no treatment. Because in the plant they extract, but they also treat the material. They separate the sand from the gravel, they clean it. So we did 24 hours of no work, and then we opened it to the public, so the public could walk around the installations on this kind of quiet place, looking at the material. What I enjoy of this project, and I didn't actually thought about it before doing it, but it's this big travel of the gravel and the sand. I mean, I knew about the travel. I mean, Catalonia, Lerida, the area where this gravel quarry is below the Pyrenees, the high mountains. This thing happened in many places. The rocks from the high mountain got crushed and brought back down by the rivers, whom reduce it into gravel and sand and deposit it. And this is a process of thousands of years and sometimes million years. And the gravel and sand is deposited, and then the extraction, the quarry takes them, and then they separate it, they clean it, and they are going to do, in this case, a prefab. So it's going to go into the construction industry, or sometimes they also make concrete in this place. So what we did this day of no working, we were walking along this material that in this long travel from the high mountains to the valley, stop. For 1 day it was stop, and we could watch it, get to know it before it goes to become the city. Let's see if it moves. This work we did in Switzerland, and it's a very similar idea of asking a gravel quarry to stop. But in this case, what I find worth to do the project again is that it was a very small gravel quarry, extremely small, but it is placed in the very high mountains. So this system of mountain, valley, river, bringing down the stone and crushing it, it is very clear. Actually, I think in the image you can see the mountain, the valley, the river on the left, how it deposits the gravel, and how it is removed by the company. I think it's like a lesson of geology, and how the river brings the gravel and how it is extracted. So I asked them to stop extraction, but instead of 1 day, I tried something new. I asked them to stop 1 hour every week. The show started in July and ended in October. Every week on Friday, we stop 1 hour. So we did this kind of performance that we repeat. I like repetition a lot, insisting, because I learn from things change. But in this case, I think it really mimics the extraction industry, because that's how it works. They take gravel on Monday, but then on Tuesday, but then on Wednesday, it goes on. And I wanted to bring that up. So we did this continuous performance every week. And well, this day, unfortunately, I miss it, but it was good weather. So the public that were allowed into the gravel quarry during this hour of stop, they were enjoying the river, as you can see, because this is what happened. If you stop the machines, what you hear is the river. It's very, very clear. It was very strong sound of a river, mountain rivers. In Montreal, when I was invited here about 1 year ago, actually, September, we organized a site visit where I look at different areas, different wastelands, and from all I could hear and visit, I decided to work with La Carrière Francon, the Francon quarry, because I was completely impressed by the place. The scale of the place is 1.6 kilometers. It's really long. It's very deep. And then, besides the beauty of the impressive scale of the place, there is quite a wild nature going on there. And then there is this uncertainty on what's going to happen with it in the future. So it feels like all these things that are not known about the future of the Francon quarry made it necessary to go into it. At the same time, this has been a difficulty because there are really many things we don't know because they are not decided or not communicate. So this was a challenge. We got a permit to visit it, and this is the snow. Actually, some areas are partially used. Well, you know a little bit the story of the quarry. One of the reasons why I think it is interesting is that it was used to take limestone for construction, but then very soon in the 20th century it was for the extraction of aggregates for asphalt and road construction and for the production of concrete. So smashing the limestone and reducing it. In the 60s it got like completely an euphoria of production of gravel. They extract, let me see, look at it. In a good, the days of good weather, when it was not winter, they extract like 15,000 tons a day, by day. I mean, 15,000 tons. I mean, it's really, they blast, they dynamite. So the pace of construction was very, very big, between the 60s and the 80s. So a lot of Saint Michel neighborhood, but also Montreal is built out of this quarry. Actually, when you see concrete, there is a chance that is coming from Francon. And this, together with the way in the 80s they stopped extracting because they have took it all of it, and then there were different projects to use it. Some more or less friendly, like a camping, a shopping mall, very problematic. That luckily enough was not realized because of the financial crisis. Well, it is controversial place, and it is not decided. The future is not decided, so that's why we are going into it. And okay, some more of the photos. Yeah, this is the publication, which is in the exhibition, and if you want to have it, it's there. It's for free. Oh, yeah, okay. Where I have it here. Yeah, I try to show again. Here, you see with the light. All the information we could find on the quarry, on the present situation, and on the future, and on the discussion is here. I think we got the last information kind of the week we were going to the printer, which is here. So I think we put together quite some things. I mean, there's people that know much more, but that we could find is here. And then, let me see. It's a very different kind of projects. Okay, we are in Canada. These are the projects on mineral rights. So my first question is if everyone knows what mineral rights are. You don't know? Okay, because I also did a new. Before I did this project, I published several books on underneath, and I did a new. And I went to Dallas, Texas, and then people talk a lot about mining rights in United States, and then I hear, and I was very shocked. Mineral rights relate to the ownership of the underneath. it relates with something that I think is rather American. They call vertical property. Vertical property means if we do a line that the air, like this is a building, the building might be owned by someone, which is different than the owner of the land, which is different than the owner of the air. I think most architects know that the air is owned by someone different, but the underneath is also owned by someone different. Okay, so the ownership of underneath, ground, building, and air is a different thing legally. And this changed by country, but in general, there are different ownership. What I have been, my mineral rights relate with the ownership of the underneath. In most countries, I don't know Canada, but to start with, in general, the ownership of the underneath is held by the government. It's public. But, and that's the tricky part, the governments, they lease the ownership of the underneath to mining companies to facilitate mining. So when I hear about the mining rights, everyone is talking about mining rights all the time in Dallas, Texas, because if you don't buy the underneath your building, they suck it for the oil. That's basically what happened. Because the oil, they can put a pipe and get the oil without owning the land. So people talk a lot about that. So when I hear about this, I was curious because no one talk about that in Europe. So I look at it, and it was not that obvious. And then I found out this website from the Ministry of Economy of the Netherlands, so that's a public website. And what you see is a map of the Netherlands with all the mineral rights, what they call concessions, actually. Different mineral rights given to different companies. So if you see, and now I need to approach again, Rotterdam, and I say Rotterdam, I could put another city as example, but that's where I live since 15 years. This is part of a concession called Rijswijk concession. And the owner of this concession is NAM, which I contact, and Shell called me. So this is owned by Shell. So Shell owns the mining rights below Rotterdam. So I live in a city for 15 years, and I didn't use Shell owns the mining rights. That's something that, it kind of blow up in my face. The night I found it, my world changed. My world, the way I understood the world changed, because if Shell owns underneath where we live and no one knows, I mean, what are we talking about when we are talking? And then I do all these projects on different pieces of ground everywhere, and I don't know whom is sucking. Actually, because some of these concessions are exploration mining rights, and the orange are exploration, and the yellow are extraction. And actually, the Rotterdam is extraction. So this shocked me a lot, and I decided to do a project, not with the Netherlands, because I'm not interested in gas and oil, I'm interested in construction materials. So I decided I wanted to have mineral rights of a construction material, iron. I find iron very interesting. Without iron, and still you cannot have concrete. It's so basic and important in modern architecture. In everywhere we are, there is iron, and it's so cheap. I also like that, because I don't want to become a millionaire with my mining rights. I don't want to speculate. So iron seemed like the best material. So it was not easy, and that's again a too long narration to tell you how I managed to get the mining rights and the places where we fail. But I ended getting a concession in Norway. So you're looking at the website from the Norwegian Mining Authority, and the gray areas are concessions, so areas where companies have mining rights. And okay, that's a bit with more detail. You will see Oslo, a little bit to the right up, and somewhere there between Oslo and the airport. You see Oslo? Well, it doesn't matter. It's a little bit, a bit right. The center right, and then, okay, this is the concession I got. So this is a screenshot from the website of the Mining Authority. It is 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, so 1 square kilometer, which is the smallest allowed. I did the smallest because, well, I'm not a big company, obviously, and I thought it was kind of easier to handle. They are not expensive, the mining rights. I really don't want you to think it's a question of power, because I'm a famous artist. I buy a lot of, because it's not something you buy. The mining rights is a license you get from the mining authority. They cost 1,000 kronen a year, which is like 100 Canadian dollars, more or less. So they are really cheap. It's basically a tax. I pay a tax. And they're exploration mining rights, which means I am allowed to explore. Actually, I am obligated to explore. So that comes also with the project. So I am engaged. I must explore the mining rights, which is, I do the exploration. I find it interesting to do some exploration, but non-intrusive. So I don't do drillings. I don't want to destroy. Because, of course, the aim of this project is to make sure people know about the ownership of the underneath, also about this map I showed you of the Netherlands, like the cake, the country cut in pieces, how the land is cut in pieces to facilitate mining. So I think it's important to know about it, because I think also with a lot of discussions in mining, like when we discuss, when people discuss, I don't know, like a mine should have fracking or not, or one technique, well, then we are discussing techniques, but actually maybe the discussion is the right to mine at all, no? Why places are being mined? Why I'm owner of this? You should be getting angry, actually, with me, because I own this place. So I like that, but then, of course, the mining rights are exclusive, which for me is very important. They are protected. This iron is protected because I got it. And the beautiful part of it is that the mining rights in most countries, I've checked the mining law, they're until the middle of the earth, until they call an infinite depth. It's a system because otherwise, of course, you would be getting the mining rights to the other side of the planet, and the National Marine Authority just can't give you, they really say until the middle of the earth. Yeah, that's a cool part of it. So this is the place. It has been protected, the iron, and of course to take out the iron, also the trees and everything there gets damaged, so everything benefits from not taking the iron. The iron there is magneted. You know, there are different iron minerals, which is like 300 million years, more or less. I mean, the times of geology are a bit scary, but I think it's important to be aware when something is removed like that, you are taking from everyone ever, or everyone in the future as well. So it's a little bit scary how it goes. This is in Austria, so I've been doing that, like if I'm inviting a place, look a little bit how it works, which is always good to know. In Austria, you don't apply to a square area, but to a center of a circle with a radius of 420 meters, 800 meters circle, but also to the middle of the earth, also iron. This is all the mining rights around Graz. And this is one of the ones I got later, because I had a show in Valencia. At the beginning, for me to have mining rights in Spain was very difficult, because it's a bit more complex than Austria and Norway. But then having in Norway and Austria made it a little bit, I had some experience, so we managed to apply in Valencia. And in this case, I was looking for iron, and then we realized there was this volcano. It's a very small volcano, very, very small, very young for a volcano, and very damaged. It is very, very damaged because they have been extracting lava, pozzolan lava for the cement industry to produce cement. So it is extremely damaged. Nowadays they don't extract. So I managed to have the mining rights. The sad about it is that the mining rights are not forever. So I keep on getting mining rights, but I keep on losing mining rights. So actually the Norwegian, I just lose, but we are applying now again. The Austrian, we apply again, and it's fine. And the volcano is gone. We managed to expand it 1 year, but still it's gone. So I was a bit more happy when I was saying I'm getting mining rights, and now that I have to, be confronted with the fact that actually I'm losing. I lose these ashes of this volcano. Well, the application was not. It was complicated. We had the help of a geologist in Spain. Okay, that's it. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I actually had the pleasure of seeing one of your works in Hong Kong. And of course, that's a very, I found that very different to the portfolio of work you showed tonight. It was listing the materials for a building under construction, not demolition or protecting an area. So I was just curious to talk if you could talk a little bit about that work and how it was working with the institution or the architect, and how the method was different from, yeah.
Great. Yeah, thanks that you mentioned that work. It's a work where I calculate all the construction materials used to make a building. And this case was the Plus, a new museum built in Hong Kong that already opened, new contemporary art museum. And the presentation was it's very simple. It's just a text. It's very similar to the work I showed you of Sao Paulo. The materials is like that. It's just a wall text. So this was the same. It was a wall text. I have to say, I start calculating materials of buildings. Before the water tower, I did a work where I identified all the construction materials of a building in Brussels. And then it feel a bit an interesting calculation to know what things are built of. Then it feel a little bit too abstract, just to give the numbers without presenting the materials. So the idea to really show the materials in the water tower came from that, to make the materials, the enormous volume of materials be experienced by the public and also by myself. But then later I realized that if the list of construction materials of a building, because the first time I would put it in a piece of paper, so people go into the building and they would see a list of the materials in a paper. It was a bit boring. And then that's how I started to pile them up, but then I realized that actually if I put a list of materials not in a piece of paper, but really on a wall text in the exhibition, that you enter the building and you have the list of materials, that's not so bad as the piece of paper. And I think it makes sense in the place. I mean, I don't know if the list of materials of M Plus Museum would make sense here, but there it makes sense because there are all the materials being carried by truck. At that moment was the building site. Most of the materials are aggregates, gravel, sand. They are being extracted at that very moment when we did the work. So I think it makes sense to understand the scale of construction. So I don't regret that work. But maybe we present it during the building site. Maybe it is better inside the building. Once the building is open, when they present it, and they will present it, I don't know when, but you are in the building, and then you see the list of everything used to build it, and then you see concrete, and then you see concrete, you see stone. I like this.
Hi, thank you. Just to put it shortly, I'm part of a group of artists in the Châteauneuf area. We're currently occupying, we claimed a wasteland there. And part of our project is to sort of just use the space. And your work talks about land being kind of this liminal, wasteland being liminal. And I'm just kind of wondering, how do you picture people interacting with these spaces?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me has always it's a great question because it's true I didn't say much about it, but I'm trying not to operate as a designer really because the work is so much criticizing it. So I'm trying not to give uses or even monitor the uses. So I try to keep things so open as I can. And that's one reason why I like the guides, because in a way they give you the idea that the place is there, you can go, but then really what you do with it is really your thing. And so that's how I like to work. So open up something and then let it happen.
So we got permission from the developers to be there, and it's going to be built in around 4 years. They're going to tear it down. And so we're sort of hoping to do something with it, but we don't know.
How is it? Do you have? It's like a garden you can enjoy. It's a great one. Do you have trees?
There's trees. There's a lot of indigenous plants. There's a lot of natural growth. It's the typical wasteland. It's there's a huge pile of rubbish, like rock debris, and
What can I tell you? So you are really asking me for advice. I mean, for sure, the problem I had when I tried to protect. Okay, I can tell you something. One of my problems when we tried to protect the wasteland in Germany, and when we entered the room, the authorities could see, because Germany has such a tradition of environmentalists since the 70s. Like, they smell us. The way we dress, they smell us. So there was like, no, we don't protect it 6 months because the trees get older than 20 years and then we can never develop it. So, the municipality, they were already kicking us out of the room while we enter. So I think the nature growing there is very important. I would ask you to join, if it's really advice what you're asking me, with, there are these botanists we were mentioning yesterday with Maros, that are, there is a nature that is not allowed to grow anywhere else in the city because it's considered a foreigner or weeds, And there is a part of the botanists there in the Netherlands are pretty 70s people, they study these natures and they defend that this nature actually should have the right to exist as well. And a lot of foreign plants, actually, also in Rotterdam, because of the port city. Yeah, in port cities you have a lot of them coming by the ballast of, the nature. If you are looking for arguments to keep it more than 4 years, because I think you want to keep it more than 4 years, that's for sure.
Well, also, we shouldn't claim it as ours. It should have its own agency. In a way, that's what we think. So we're trying to see ways how we can reconcile with nature in the city.
Yeah, I think it's one of the potentialities of such a place in the city. And I think some experts might be able to help you seeing what is there.
Thank you so much for your talks. Really, really interesting. In hearing you talking about those huge projects, so I see all the energy that is behind those projects. So can you talk a little bit about the logistic, the collaboration, and how you develop your projects?
Yeah, great that you asked that, because, it's the thing is I don't have a rule because each project is very site-specific, so I adapt a little bit to the condition there, but I always work with people in the place. So I don't have a team of people working with me in my studio, but I work with people in the place that have the expertise of knowing what's going on, getting permits, moving around, speaking the language, understanding documents. This is for me very, very important, because then I can get to do things I couldn't do alone. So for example, in the case of the publication we did on Franco Quarry CCA, it was a CCA team that helped me with the research. And they did phone calls and had conversations I couldn't have had, or someone in Rotterdam could have had. So that's why we manage. So the expertise of people living in the city is very important for my project. I always work with people on the place. I also, in the large installations, so that's for research, but also for permits, it's important the help of the art institution. A lot of my works have been produced in the frame of a biennale, which is probably, it's not my ideal thing, I didn't decide it. Probably I prefer to work with a local art center, but that's what happened. That's how the art world has functioned last years, and I did the best I can within it. So in the biennales, there's also a budget and a production team based in the city that can talk with authorities and companies and get things done, and I have been helped by this very much, and it has been very helpful. So the institutes or biennales or art centers I work with help me with the production. They do the production with me. So actually we came into something together. Yeah, I think it's interesting to mention that, because this is not something every artist does. I mean, traditional, older generation than me, they are more into the studio, so they ask for a lot of money, and then if they are famous, they get a lot of assistants, and they produce a lot and stuff. I don't do that. But also the younger generation, they are a lot against the art institute. A friend that say, yeah, artists like my generation, we put the Art Institute to work for us, you know. So I get things done that I couldn't do on my own, because I am a part of Biennale. Like with Taipei Biennale, we protect one wasteland forever. I could have never done that. And this is not a model of behavior. I mean, that's also because I don't know whom of you is architects, but I know in architects' context, very often is this idea of making models. No, I'm not a model. I don't say that's a way to operate, to use a biennale to protect a piece of land, but that's the way I did, because that's what I had at hand. And this is not a model, but that's how I did. So I used everything I could. And it changed in every situation and every country, because it's not the same a Belgian wasteland than a Taipei wasteland.
Merci beaucoup pour votre présentation. Je voulais savoir si vous aviez fait des observations des différences entre les villes nord-américaines et les villes européennes par rapport à leur relation avec leurs terrains vagues.
Avec les terrains?
Avec les terrains vagues. Quelles sont les différences, ressemblances peut-être?
I see quite some civil engagement here I didn't see in other cities. But then also every wasteland is very particular. Je pense que c'est difficile de comparer la carrière Saint-Michel, Francon, du quartier Saint-Michel avec une autre friche dans la ville même. C'est déjà différent. Je ne crois pas que je peux vraiment comparer. Non. Désolée.
Pas de problème, merci.
No, I think I like to see places as unique.
Thank you for your presentation. I was not sure if I understood correctly that with the mineral rights that you have for that plot of land, so you said that you also have to exploit it, and I was wondering what your plans are for that.
Yes, well, what I have are exploration mineral rights. Normally companies, they first get the exploration mineral rights, and if the exploration proves to be profitable for them, then they apply for the extraction. And that's when we read in the newspaper. That's already too late, okay? So the exploration are kind of easier mineral rights to get, but they are a very important part of the whole process. Without them, there is no extraction. That's why they're important. Now, they are to facilitate exploration, and they demand it. And then it depends by country. Some countries are more demanding in the proof of exploration. Normally, mining exploration, there are many ways. If we go into oil and sea, I don't know so well, but with iron, there is a lot of, first, the history of the place, because most iron deposits have been mined in the past, because human beings have been taking iron since always. So the history is the beginning, the mapping, and when I say map, it can go quite deep. Sampling, that means taking samples, but taking samples could be collecting something on the floor, or, Geologists, they say you always need to hammer yourself, otherwise you don't know. You can trust. Magnetometer, magnetism, iron is magnetic, so there is a machine that detects the magnetism, and with this you can draw like a topographic map, let's say like a map of the thickness and the power of the mineral, and then drilling a carottage, which means really go with a pipe and take a sample. From all these, I don't want to, so these are kind of the typical, I'm sure I forgot some, but kind of the main exploration means of minerals. And when I say sampling, means sampling and bring it to a lab, of course, and analyzing it. I don't want to do anything invasive, so carottage or drilling, I don't do. And the other things, of course, look at the history, I do. And then, I go there, not every year, more or less when I have time, and collect some samples, send it to a lab, or go there with a geologist. I do that a bit, it's a bit part of the project, but also interesting. And then with this, I I get to know more about the place, but I also comply with the mining authority, because to apply again, I need to prove that I did some exploration. And then most of the exploring mining rights don't end in extraction. I mean, not just about me, but very often companies, they explore places that at the end they don't remove. And then the mining authority kind of gathers all these explorations. So the mining authority knows more about the minerals in the country. That's how it works.
Hi. I was wondering if you think that, or how you see these sites and the materials on them as having their own agency?
The mineral deposit, the place, the ground, the wasteland, all kind of places, you mean, or the mineral in particular?
Either one, honestly, either the sites that you work with or the materials in the projects where you calculate the materials.
If they have agency by themselves?
Yeah.
When we are talking about, I mean, it is a question that comes to a very contemporary discussion on the rights of the nature, which I think is a very exciting moment we are seeing now. I mean, the rights of the nature have been thought maybe since 20 or 30 years, but now it's quite a big public discussion whether the nature has their own rights or not. And I think it's quite an interesting move in questioning whether we can do whatever we want. So, for example, the Spanish mining law, but I think any mining law, but the Spanish I know very well, they say the nature resources are there for the Spanish people to profit. You know, it's very shocking. Probably the Canadians say also something similar. So, and I think the key of the thing is, well, the most horrifying is the word profit and also the word resource. If you say this thing underneath, or nature or planet Earth, whatever you want to call it, is a resource, okay, that's the beginning of the problem, no? I think at the moment, for sure, it has been extracted. So we see it as a construction material or a resource. It is certainly having very little agency, unfortunately. I hope there is more questioning on the point of view of the mountain, actually.
Hi. I guess it could be a last question. I was wondering how you get to find or discover the wastelands in different places. It seems that you have worked internationally in different countries. So I guess those pieces of lands are not significant in a sense. So it's I don't know, how do you walk around the city and you find them, and then for, I guess, also to publish the research, what kind of relationship do you sort of build with that land? Like how much time you spend there? Yeah, basically your research, where does it start and how does it build up to it?
Yeah, the thing about how to find the wastelands, once I realize I am interested in that kind of places, I look for them actively. So basically, when I am in a new place, we organize meetings with architects and city planners, and we sit in front of the map, and I ask them about this. I show them a bit what I do, and then they tell me. So in Montreal, I came for 1 week, and I visit a lot of places. So the Francon quarry was the one I found more interesting for a project, but I really want non-stop from one place to another. That city planners and architects, also the team here in CCN knows a lot, have been pointing to me. So, this kind of situation is psychogeography, random, walking in the city. No. No, I also do that a little bit in between one wasteland or another, but it's really very focused to make the best use of time. And then, so I actively look for them. In the Francon quarry, I would have liked to spend more time, but the access was not that simple. So we were there just for 1 day, which for me is super short. I normally go again and again and again.
On va prendre peut-être une dernière question. Allez-y. Oui.
Thank you for your presentation. I just wondered whether you had done or would consider doing any projects in the Arctic, where there is, of course, a lot of extraction and increasingly also infrastructure.
In the architect?
In the Arctic.
Yes, the Arctic. Yeah. I was thinking about the Arctic here. Of course, the Arctic is the Arctic. Whether you access it from, yeah. I didn't want to work with the Arctic at the beginning because it's like everyone with the Arctic. But then I had this commission by the Norwegian Minister of Environment, and they allowed me to work with whatever I want. And everyone was like, Lara, Arctic. I was like, no, it's too exotic. There's all this, it's kind of a myth. I try to avoid that. I prefer to stay near the cities, like the mining rights I didn't mention, but they are near Graz, near Oslo. I want to stay urban. I want to talk about construction. But then what I did, when I was invited to do something in Norway, and I could work with whatever I want, I decided to look at areas that were threatened. And then having different conversations with people in the Agency for Protection of Nature, that were my commissioners, I asked them for projects that were pretty scary. And then very soon I realized the next mines, the future mines, the ones that were being discussed to be open, this is kind of the most dramatic place I can think about. So it's not even a wasteland that's going to be developed, but a wonderful mountain that is going to be cut and all the tailings thrown to the fjord. So I went to see some of these places, and then they were going to open a coal mine in Spitsbergen in Svalbard, that is the Arctic. And then I thought, why should I talk about a mine open near Bergen, near Oslo, if they're open? The Arctic is the future of everyone. So I have to talk about it. So that was my Arctic project. So what I did, we calculate all the rocks of the Spitsbergen Island, a bit like the calculations I did of the museum or Sao Paulo city, but of the whole island. To say the island can be destroyed for mining, and actually will be destroyed, to treat a natural area as a construction, as a source of places of construction, which is pretty terrifying. I'm sorry about this.